What's up, dudes? Darren Dyke here, and this is Scapo. This is my skateboarding channel where I do all kinds of fun breakdowns on how skateboarding works. I do a lot of fun slow motion videos of extremely talented and professional skateboarders, and then I also show my own process for how I learned to skate and how I am just in general becoming a more healthy, balanced human being. So yeah, I'm starting a new series today that I think is going to be really, really fun, just talking about the science of skateboarding. And in a nutshell, I am just going back to the fundamentals of what science is, because there's, science can be a loaded term, right? Depending on who you're asking, like a lot of people have different things that are going on in their mind about what science is. I'm literally just going back to the fundamentals of the scientific method. You make an observation, right? Then you ask a question about that observation. Then you go and you create a hypothesis about what you think the results of that question are going to be. Then you test that hypothesis, right? And after you've tested that hypothesis, you analyze the results of your test and you come up with a theory, which is a more solidified version of whatever your hypothesis might be. And it might actually be entirely different than what your hypothesis was in the first place, right? But this method is how we have come to develop amazing new technologies and do all kinds of wonderful things. And inside of the specific context of skateboarding, it is how literally all tricks that have ever been developed have been made. Whether we realize that that's the process or not, whether we name it as being the process or not, that is the functional process for how you learn a trick. And today, I want to kick off a series where we start talking about the smaller, more nuanced pieces of how tricks function so that you can build up a knowledge base of information on how skateboarding works to be able to create tricks of your own and to be able to just become a better skateboarder. So today, we're going to talk about something that's fairly nuanced. Today, we're going to talk about why Shuvits are so much easier to do, Fakie and Nollie, than they are to do regular or switch. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so we have an observation. It is easier to do a Shuvit Fakie than it is to do a Shuvit going regular. Why is that? That is our question. Why is it so much easier? So, we get to the hypothesis stage. This is part 3. So, observe, question, hypothesis. And the hypothesis part of this method is why it is so important to have a really solid baseline understanding of the fundamentals of how the world functions, right? The more you understand about that, the more accurate your hypothesis is generally going to be when trying to figure out how your board is going to function in this case, right? So I want to talk about 3 scientific laws that are kind of important to this particular trick. And the first is friction. Friction is actually really, really important in this particular scenario because, again, just going back to the utter basics, friction being the one surface of one object interacting with the surface of another object so that as it moves, it is more or less hard to move depending on the surface that you're on. If you're on really gritty ground, it is going to be really, really hard to be able to get a board to move. If you're on a super smooth surface where it's really, really slick, it's going to be less friction involved and it is going to move more easily. There are advantages to one versus another, but in this case, that's just an important note to have. With a Shuvit, when you are going regular, right, when you're going, like, we're going this direction, right, one of the things that happens, right, is you're going this direction. If you try to get the board to move, you're doing this. And the ground is basically acting on the board to try to recorrect it to go this way. Because the wheels, they move in one direction, right? They're not moving in a multi-directional manner. They're moving in a singular rotational manner in one functional direction. So if you change the direction of where that's going, but your momentum is going a different direction of where the board is, there's going to be extra added friction involved. So when you're going regular, the friction gets involved, and it basically is trying to get the board to correct back this way. That is what the ground is doing. The ground is trying to get the board to correct this way, and you're trying to get the board to go this way. So you're going against the grain of the ground. And so when you're going regular, that causes problems. That's also part of why it's really hard to get it to do with both wheels on unless you have a really, really slick surface. So if you're going fakie though, suddenly that's a whole different scenario because the friction is working for you instead of against you. Basically, as the board's coming across, you start to lift the board and turn it, and friction grips that wheel right there, and it tries to push the front end of that board back around. So when you're going fakie, that friction grips the ground, and it throws the front of that board around and makes it much easier. Second principle that we're going to talk about is the law of conservation of momentum, right? The board is going to just continue moving in whatever direction you get it moving. So if you are trying to go this way, right, and you're trying to get the board to do a full rotation, it takes more energy to be able to get the board past that initial break of getting past its initial direction to shift into a different direction because you have friction as an extra added piece. It takes more energy to be able to get the board moving at the momentum it needs to be able to do a full rotation. When you're going fakie, again, it helps add that extra level of energy working for you rather than against you. But it's easier for the board to just continue moving in that direction because there's less factors at play. And that also means that if you can do it a little bit faster, and say you exert the same amount of energy that you would into getting into doing a regular shove it and into doing a fakie shove it, you might be able to do a full 360 shove it. So you might be able to add a full extra spin with minimal extra effort. So the law of conservation of momentum is really, really, really important for being able to add variables into doing a fakie shove it. Talk about is the lever effect. On a board, right, the lever effect is basically you have a fulcrum. In this case, it is a connecting point with the board, and on this side, you're trying to act on this with your foot, and this side is going to react in accordance to what your foot on this side is doing, right? So you pop it, and this front end of the board is going to be much, much harder to move than it is to necessarily move something that would have been closer. Like the further and further away you get from the fulcrum point of a lever, like the more weight, the more oomph it has. It takes more energy to get it to move, right? But once it gets moving, it is much harder to stop. So when you are going regular, the lever effect gives you extra added tension. Not tension, that's not the right word. It gives you extra added force required in order to be able to get that front end to lever its way around 180 degrees. Versus when you start going Fakie, once it starts to move, that front end is naturally just going to keep going on its own. So between friction working for you, the law of conservation of momentum, meaning that the board is going to continue moving in the direction that it starts moving in until it is acted upon by an external force, added to the lever effect, where you have friction getting that front end of the board moving with a whole lot of extra energy that you don't have to exert. The ground is doing that for you. Those are like the three main things that make it much easier to do a trick going fakie or nollie that involves a shove it than it is to do it going regular. Now, there's some other factors that play at this as well, but in general, these are the three, I think, most important parts of why it is so much easier to do fakie and nollie tricks than it is to do regular or switch. Anyway, I know that's a long-winded explanation, but honestly, the more you understand the small little seemingly innocuous functionalities of how a board moves, like the better you're going to be able to start applying some of these basic principles into other tricks that you're doing. For instance, when you start trying to add like under flips or late flips or any of these different variables to your basic fundamental tricks, your ollie, your shove it, your kick flip, these things, you start to be able to understand what you need to accomplish in order to be able to add that extra variable. So we're going to talk more about other scientific principles. We're going to talk about other specific tricks and how they work. We're going to get into all kinds of fun stuff in this regards. So why did I start today off with shove-its? There is this wonderful woman named Elaine Cross who was getting into her older age, and she got cancer. And as a means of fighting against cancer, she decided that she wanted to go start up an organization called Shove It Cancer. The idea was that she wanted to, in her process of trying to beat cancer, wanted to learn how to do a shove it with a skateboard in order to build awareness around cancer and cancer research. And she put her whole energy into this. And she was just such an inspirational woman. It was so cool. It was so cool to see like the whole skate community get like involved in her life and to get involved with this movement. But she recently passed away of a lung infection, and it was really, really sad to see. But in memory of Elaine, there is a whole bunch of the skate community that on July 10th is going to be using that as World Shove It Day. And that is a day that we're all going to go and do shove-its and make shove-it videos and do all kinds of fun tricks involving shove-it. So I thought it would be a good idea to give you guys some basic fundamentals on how shove-its work. And I'm probably going to do a few more videos on like the difference between like a regular shove-it and like a pop shove-it and some other variables. I'm going to make some more videos on how to learn how to do shove-it and shove-it variables so that you can, on July 10th, go and make some awesome videos using the hashtag ShoveItCancer, because Elaine was awesome, cancer sucks, and I think it's a really good movement to get behind. So, July 10th, guys. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I am looking forward to making more content for you in the very near future. So until next time, guys, take care, and I'll see you soon.